Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Friday. Today we're with Molly Murrah. Molly was the president of the Northwest Watercolor Society, a phenomenal watercolor society, which she did a phenomenal job. It was always very awesome to interface with her. So today she's here as showing you her artwork. And Molly, I didn't ask you, is it all right if people ask you questions as you're painting, or would you like to wait to the end?
No, it's totally fine.
Okay, so
if we wait to the end, I won't get I probably won't get finished. So yeah, let's do it as I'm painting. I'll do the best I can.
Awesome. So if you're on Zoom, you'll be able to ask Molly questions directly. If you're on Facebook, I'm going to ask Letiza and Jen and whatever other brand ambassador there is to relay the messages. My Macintosh is still updating, so I'm doing this on my phone, and the screen is already very, very small, so I can't see Facebook. So Molly, can you tell the viewers a little bit about yourself?
Oh gosh, I was a graphic designer for 40 years, basically freelance. And I painted my first watercolor in, I don't know, 25 years ago, and it intimidated me so much. George, I was on a trip to Greece when I painted my very first watercolor. It intimidated me so much that when I came back to Seattle, I didn't paint again. I didn't pick up a brush for 4 years. And then one day I just decided this was really stupid. You know, I've got these beautiful brushes and all these gorgeous Daniel Smith paints, and I started painting, and I've been painting ever since. And I started teaching in 2010 when an outfit in Seattle, I was watching webinars that they were doing on computer programs like Adobe and things like that. And the owner said, I'm thinking about doing a webinar on fine art painting. Would anybody be interested? And I said, sure, I'd be interested. And I'm a watercolor artist. I'd love it. And he said, well, you'll be our first instructor. And I was. And that's what preparing for that class, in one of those classes, 2,000 people were watching. And preparing for that class got me here. You know, just taught me that I love to teach, and that's what I want to do. So, and I paint as a part so that I can be a teacher. I don't teach so I can paint, which is what most teachers do. I paint so I can teach.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Neat. And so why don't we start with your slideshow, and maybe you can walk us through it, what we're seeing. Thank you, Ethel.
Okay, this is just the first slide, and this is a self-portrait I did last year, and I thought I would put that on this first slide. This is my website, and what all of you will quickly wonder as I realize as I go through these slides is that I'm not very organized when it comes to social media. So I don't have a lot of extra time to devote to it, but I do the best I can. So this is my website, mollymurrah.com. This is my Facebook page, which I titled Expressions in Watercolor about a decade ago when I first set this page up. And then a couple of years ago, when I set up my Instagram page, I had registered a domain called Gallery H2O because I wanted to do a gallery online. And I loved the domain and I kept it. And for some reason, I'm using that on my Instagram. So I use one handle on Facebook and another one on Instagram. And I'm sorry about that. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking that through, but there you go. So I paint everything, you guys. I paint animal portraits, people portraits. I'm going to do a people portrait today, landscapes, florals, still lifes. There's really nothing that I don't paint. To me, and I will say this, everything you paint is values, shapes, and color. I don't care what it is. And so I look at it that way, and I get off on the magic of the watercolor medium. So this is a lion that was a demo in a portrait, in an animals class. This is my cat, Danny, that I painted about 5 or 6 years ago. He won an award in one of the Northwest Watercolor Society shows. This is just a still life. I was at my friend David's house, and these were flowers on his table, and I took a photograph and painted them. This is another still life. I did this as a demo in a painting shadows class, which is what this class was all about. And this was hard, but it was a lot of fun. This was from Greece. This was I took a trip to Greece, and this was that trip that I was telling you about. And this was a photograph from Greece, and I painted this only about 4 or 5 years ago. And this is just a landscape that I taught in my landscape class, and in that class nobody drew anything. We had a ruler, we drew a horizon line, and that was it. Nothing else was, no other pencil was put to paper, and it's a lot of fun to paint like that. And this is a portrait I did about 2 or 3 weeks ago, that when I started, I always paint the faces first, because you know, if you don't get the face right, what's the point of the portrait? So I paint the faces first, and I was very, very unhappy with this. And I was about ready to tear it in half and use the back for scratch paper. And then I decided to just go ahead and finish it. And somehow I pulled it out in the end. And now it's one of my favorite paintings I've ever done. This is my friend Craig, who's been, you know, a subject of mine before. He's a dear friend. We've been really good friends for many, many years. I just loved the hat on his head and all of that. And I wanted to do the juxtaposition of something somewhat representational and realistic, and then non-representational in the same painting. And this is a portrait that I did as a demo at a large gathering in Seattle about 3 or 4 years ago. The actual name of this portrait is 45 Minutes. And I thought I would throw it in here because it's the only portrait of my life I've ever painted in 45 minutes. And I'm going to attempt to do it again today, but it's one of my favorites. And because it took really 45 minutes from start to finish. So let's wish me luck. Let's see if I can do that again today. Okay, that's it today.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, that's it. That's it. All right. Are we ready, John?
Ready. I'm trying to mute my other system. Yes, that was very nice, Molly. Ready. I'm trying to mute my
All
other
right,
system.
so
That was very nice.
So I guess focus on my table, and I'll just quickly go through real quick my supplies. When I paint portraits, I use flat brushes. I don't use rounds. And the reason I do that is because when you paint with a flat brush, you paint a lot of surface at one time. And because my desire has always been to get to the place where I can paint as fast and as free and as loose as possible, by using the flat brushes, I can paint bigger portions of my painting at one time. I also like the look that a flat brush does on the paper. And the way I talk about it with my students is, think of those styrofoam heads that you see wigs pinned to, you know, when they're selling them in a store. Think of taking little 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch tiles and gluing them all over that styrofoam head. What you end up getting is a lot of flat planes, right? So each one of these brushes represents a flat plane to me. And sometimes I literally make a sound in my head. I go, nah, I literally make a sound when I put the brush down, because I stop with the stroke. I don't go very far. I very rarely do this, you know, very rarely. And you can get away with it on the face because there aren't very many long straight lines, except for long hair. Of course, the hair is a different thing. But I mostly use flat brushes. These 3 brushes I bought 25 years ago. They're Kolinsky Sable. I've taken good care of them. I paid $39 for these 3 brushes 25 years ago, and I've never bought a Kolinsky Sable ever again, and I'm still using them. So they've been great brushes. This is a brush I bought at Daniel Smith. I like it so much I went out and bought 6 more of their remaining brushes when they closed the Bellevue store. It's a rat tail fine line made by Paragon. They're very inexpensive brushes. They hold a huge amount of paint. and yet they also come down to a very fine point. So I find this brush incredibly useful. I use this for final details at the end. It's another flat. I use it for painting like irises on eyes and things like that. And this, you guys, is a hardware brush. It's called a liner brush. Let me put it over. And what I did was I took my scissors and I gave it a haircut. And I took my scissors and I went like this. And I end up with all these very uneven, I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I bring this up here. Uneven bristles on the brush. This is wonderful for hair. Okay, because you can squish it and get a nice big area of dark color for a shadow. And then you can go like this and get a nice swoosh in a hair. 39 cents at the hardware store. And this brush is just a 2-inch wash brush. It's a Princeton Neptune. I also have an Isabey Sable, which is a squirrel, which is also a wonderful brush when I really want it to do a wash and I want to lay it over other color and I want to make sure I never disturb the color underneath. I'll use the Isabey. When I want to put color down and I want to get it in a certain pattern on the paper, I'll use this one because it's part synthetic and part natural. It has a little more tensile strength to it, you know, has a little more tooth to it. So those are my brushes. This is my palette. I've taken my palette and I've labeled everything and put it out on the top of my palette tray. And I did a little pre-mix on some skin tone before I started because I like to have some sort of a base color in the background to just go back to when I want to smooth things out a little bit. But this is my Daniel Smith palette. And John, I must confess, there is one color on this palette that is not Daniel Smith. And that's a color called Janet's Violet Rose. And it was a color that was specially mixed for Janet Rogers, who is a fabulous watercolor portrait painter. And it's this color right here. And you can probably see it has blue in it. So what happens when you take Janet's Violet Rose and you mix it with just about any yellow?
Oh, no, it's okay.
You get a skin tone because skin tones are yellow, blue, and red. And so, and it's a non-stainer, which I like when I do portraits because I often lift out. So if I put a stainer on the portrait, I can't lift back to white, which I like to be able to do. And so I have that on my palette as well. But everything else here is a Daniel Smith color. Yeah, that's about it. My paper.
So Molly, your forte is portrait or any other subject you work on?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand that. You broke up.
I'm asking, is your forte is portrait as far as subjects are concerned, or you do other subjects also as far as paintings concerned?
Oh, I paint all kinds of subjects, and I usually paint from photographs, and I'm going to show you my reference image here in just a minute. I wanted to tell you though that my favorite paper in the whole world to paint on for portraits, only portraits, is Saunders Waterford 200 pound. I think it's 400 GSM. It's 200 pound Saunders Waterford. And that's because other watercolor papers, when you tape them down, and I like to have them taped down on my board, when they get wet, they buckle really badly. When I paint a landscape, I wet the back of the paper and stick it down to the board. And so it doesn't buckle, but I don't like to wet the back of the paper when I'm painting a portrait. I'm going for a different effect. I'm not going for colors that just mix and blend and do all this really gorgeous magic stuff. I need a little bit more control when I'm doing a portrait. So I use 200 pound paper. It hardly buckles. It buckles a little, but not much, not enough to disturb how the paint sits in the wells and sits on the paper. So that's what I use. Now,
Molly, is that cold pressed?
Yes, it's cold press. Sorry. Yes, it's cold press. And I will tell you guys, I'm not the best person when it comes to understanding transparency and opacity and all of that with pigments. If some of you ask, well, is that really transparent? I'm going to pass that question on to John, because it's just one of the things I haven't found a need to pay a lot of attention to, given the way that I paint. Okay. So, all right, this is my reference photo. I never paint from color pictures, ever. And because if I paint from a color picture, I get utterly caught up in trying to match that color perfectly, right? I see the color, it's like I'm on a press check. I go over here and I figure out how much red, yellow, and blue I have to put in it to match that color. It takes too much time, slows me down, and it just bores me to tears. So I turn all of my photographs into black and whites in Photoshop, and I make them all exactly the size I'm going to paint them. Okay, because when you're sitting there and you're going in your mind, oh, that's about 1.5 inches wide. If my photograph was this big and I'm painting something this big, how does your mind translate that? You know, and I have a mathematical background, so doing a one-to-one transfer, I find just really much, much easier for getting my image on the paper. Okay, and I do a grid approach. What I do is I separate the image into 2 pieces and I print them out on 8.5 by 11, and I cut off this part and I cut off that part and I tape them together from the back. And this is my reference image. I do a little bit of finagling in Photoshop to get highlights and all of that kind of stuff, but not a lot. Usually the photographs I use come pretty well established. And I use mainly stock photos, you guys, because I teach, right? I don't take enough of my own photographs to share my photos with all of my students and have all of the people out there making paintings of my photographs, because when I want to enter shows, I can only enter show with a painting that's from a photograph that I took myself, right? I don't care how beautiful this demo turns out today, and hopefully it does. I could never enter it into a show, okay, because I didn't take the photograph. So I go and I get stock images. They're online. There's some that are free. I have paid for them in the past. There are lots of places to get them. One thing I do not do ever is just take a Google image off of Google, you guys, because you don't have the permission to paint that. And stock images come with the rights in it, you know, so I could put this, I could create a book that I then went out and sold. And because I took it painted from a stock image that had the rights included in the painting, I would be fine. Okay, so never take your images just straight off of Google. I know there's some great ones out there, but it's just a temptation I would resist if I were you. Okay, so there's that. Have I left anything out? Any questions? Okay, good. Now, this is my drawing. I went in and I darkened it a little bit to make sure that you'd be able to see it with the camera. I do sort of clean outline drawings, and I spend a decent amount of time, but I'm so used to doing this process now, the drawings usually take me 20 to 30 minutes. That's basically about it. And what I did was that you can sort of see the tick marks of the grid line here, there, and there. And that gives me the layout and the guideline, the roadmap to get my image onto the paper. And I actually do a technique often. I'm going to show you this because it was almost life-changing for me. There's an artist out there named Stan Miller, and I will give Stan credit for this. I saw him do this online, and it took me like until last year to remember that it was Stan Miller. And I saw this technique, it's got to be 7 or 8 years ago now. But what he does is he prints his images out exactly the size that he's going to paint them. Then he puts his image down on his paper, Let me see if I can line this up properly because I've erased all the lines in the middle of the drawing. It's very hard. Okay, so see that? So that's down there and I go, okay, I want the corner of my eye right here. Okay, do you see what happened there? I put it down. I know where the corner of the eye, then I go over here and I go, I want the corner of this eye. And I go like that and my pencil is right on my paper in the spot where I want the eye to go. And then it's just a simple matter. You've got the size of it on your paper. Then it's just a simple matter of drawing it in. But it's a way to get your major elements on the paper exactly where they need to be to recreate this likeness as best you can. Okay.
That's a great tip.
Like I say, that was pretty life-changing for me. And I give Stan Miller a lot of credit for coming up with that. Okay, here we go. Now, I'm a light to dark painter. And I mixed up a little bit of color first. This is that Janet's Violet Rose with Naples Yellow. Dan Smith Naples Yellow, which is one of my favorite colors. And oh, you know what I want to do first? I want to put a little bit of water in the hair because I don't want any hard, crisp lines over here. So when my color on the face runs up into the hair, I don't want hard lines. I want things to bleed together. Okay, here we go. I don't know if you noticed the shapes that I drew on the reference image, but they're where my highlights are. And even though I've already not paid attention to it, I figure if I sort of indicate them on my reference image, it'll help me try to maintain them a little bit on the paper. I always put some sort of blue or green at the temples. That's sort of where the skin is the lightest, and I always paint right over the eyeballs. Eyeballs are not white. And I'm going to bring in some blue on this side. That's a little darker there. And so see what happens up in the hair? The color just is running up and is making nice and soft. I've got a little bit of a hard line there, so I'll just erase that. And I don't have to go in and worry about the paint drying in there and giving me a hard time later. Now I'm just going to pull in just some yellow here. And pull in just some of the,
Molly, may I ask which blue you're using?
yeah, that was cobalt. And cobalt blue, and this is cobalt teal, this green here. Boy, it looks a lot lighter on the screen than it does on my board. Sorry, guys, I'll just make these colors really strong so that you can see them. I'm going to go a little bit darker up in this area up here, a little more shadow. A little bit darker there. I'm going to bring in some Quin Burnt Scarlet, which I love that color. Fabulous color. Back to my flesh. Now, because he's wearing a white t-shirt, I have to be careful down here on this edge. Another thing, guys, is I always tell my students to make sure you use the biggest brush you can for the space that you're painting. You will not only paint faster that way, but it just keeps you from getting lost in the weeds. And it helps a lot, giving him some more cheek color. I like to bring lots of colors in. A portrait is so much more interesting to me that way. Now, I'm painting this as if the light is coming in from this side. Okay, so ultimately, hopefully, I'm going to end up darker here on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and this is moon. Oh, too much there. This is moon glow. John, one of my favorite colors ever.
It's a very popular color.
Oh, it's just a gorgeous color. Go right over that eye.
Molly, we have a question here
Sure.
by Sandra. Maybe you want to reply to it later, but she's wondering what colors you would use for African American skin tones.
Oh, yeah, let me get back to that because I have a little practice sheet that I did for myself when I was getting ready to paint that African American painting that I showed you in the beginning.
Yeah, that would be
Right.
lovely. Thank you.
That's sitting right here. I can just bring that out.
Thanks.
I don't know if you can see these colors. They're just not, oh, you can see some. They're just not coming up as dark. Now, take a look, guys. I'm painting with a 1-inch brush, right? Look how much skin I can paint in just very few strokes. It doesn't take long. Now I'm going to switch to a smaller. That was my 1-inch brush. Now I'm going down to my, this is a 3/4. I'm going to go a little bit darker still over here. Oh, he's still wet. I don't care that any of this color goes into the hair because the hair is darker, right? So that's fine with me. I'm going to just end up covering it up anyway. I don't care if I get blooms on my paper. To me, it's just kind of interesting. I kind of like it. Most of the time, I absolutely love blooms. It's hardly a time when I don't. Now I've got some shadow down here that goes like that. Some shadow that comes around there. Some shadow that comes here. And one thing I have, you guys, in the last 5 years or so, I've developed essential trimmers in my hands. So you may see my hands shake here a little bit. I've just learned to live with it. So John, at some point, if I turn on my dryer, you say it doesn't, you can't hear it?
No, we won't be able to hear it.
Okay. How do they do that? That's magic.
Yeah, it is. There must be some decibel level that must cause it to cut out. But we'll just say it's magic. I like that better.
Yeah, me too. This is a magical meeting and we might as well use a magical process. That was the name of my first watercolor class that I taught online 10 years ago, The Magic of Watercolor. Because it is magic.
Yep.
I've never had a desire to paint in anything else ever, and don't think I ever will. Okay, where am I? Okay, I always put a dab of red underneath a nose. Look at that. I want to do a little lifting here before that dries. It's my hand. My hand is sort of covering what I'm doing. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to add a little stronger little touch of yellow over here, since this is my sun side. And now I'm going to go to my smaller brush.
Molly, are you painting at an angle or flat?
Oh, it's about you want to see my very, very, very sophisticated method of angling my painting? It's a roll of toilet paper, you guys. And it's not very thick. I would say I'm at about maybe a 15-degree angle, something like that.
Super.
A little touch of red there. Always put red on the ears. Now let's get some mouth in there. There's always some spot on the mouth that I leave connected to the skin tone. And on this one, it's right here. Okay, so that's kind of my base. Let's see where we are up here. Again, I'm using the biggest brush I can. It's not too bad. It's a little wet, but if it bleeds in a little bit, I'll be happy with that.
What color are you using for the eyebrows?
This is sepia. Daniel Smith sepia. And, you know, I'm one of those people, I really like to be very simple and very plain in things. And I mean, it really offends me to have a palette that has 32 colors on it. Really and truly, I wish I could have 12 and make that work. But because I try to paint fast so often, it really is nice just to have colors that I can pick up right out of the palette. And sepia is a go-to color of mine. It's a great color. I don't have to sit there and mix 3 colors together to get it. It comes, I can make it really dark, really light. and everything in between. Now, can you see how I'm getting eyebrows down with just a few strokes? Let's see. I may want to dry this. A little lighter over here. And as I go along, I sometimes go in and I lift out while the color is still wet. Gonna touch more red down here on the nose. And this is where I'm going to use my skin tone to sort of cover up here. Try to blend things together a little bit.
Molly, can you explain, you're using the tip or the corner of the brush?
Yeah, sometimes when I want to get, really, I don't want the full thickness of the brush. Like this is a 1/2 inch brush. When I don't want the full thickness of the brush, I will turn it on its side and just use the tip of it. And it's, one nice thing about, let's just do a simple thing here. You can go thin, thick, and then thin. I mean, this is one of the nicest things about using flat brushes. Now you can do that with a round brush too. But I just have better success with these flat brushes for some reason. Not sure why. They just work a little better for me. I started using them and I liked what happened. Now I've got to. This is quite dark here in the corner. Let's see. And I'm getting a line just by touching the brush to the paper. Another reason I like the flat brushes.
Wow, that was magical. He just smiled and just smile just got really big.
Yeah. He was a fun one to paint. I have to admit, I'm glad I chose him. Because I had fun painting him yesterday, although I hated most of it through most of the time that I practiced him yesterday. I really didn't like it, but in the end, he came out. Here he is. That was my practice painting.
Wow.
You know, they do that on the baking show, right?
I'm sorry?
They do that on the baking show.
Oh, oh, right. I should have had him half painted and brought him out, right? Like they do. That's right. Okay.
This one will turn better, Molly.
What? I couldn't hear you, Stella.
This one is turning even better.
Oh, good. Okay. I'm just going to dry just real quick because I'm going to go in with sort of like a second layer of color here. So give me just a minute or so. Okay, now I'm going to go in and start putting in some color for the eyes. I'm going back to my sepia. And I'm just laying my brush down and I get a line just by laying my brush down. Okay, and here I lay the brush down and I drag it just a little bit and I get eyelashes. And I'm not going in and doing each individual eyelash. I told my students that if they do that, I'm gonna kick them out of class. Just indicate. All of you have read, you're all artists, all of you have read that it's not necessary to tell your viewer everything. And it isn't. Leave some of it up to their imagination. So that gives just a little indication. I'm going to go in and add a little touch of shadow in here because it's pretty dark there. And it's pretty dark here. Now, I go to my small flat brush. Let's see. I think his eyes are going to be kind of a, I don't know, this color, whatever this is. And I just go over everything. I go right over the pupil.
We have a follow-up question on Facebook, and the MJ is asking, how long did it take you for the practice painting, the first one that you did? Thanks.
Yesterday, I painted for 45 minutes and I still didn't like it. And then I took a drink of water and I spent another 15 minutes on it. So I think all total about an hour. But see, I used up so much of today's session in the beginning part and talking about myself and all that stuff. I don't have that kind of time. And this is going to be a very sort of light, high key painting. But while I'm letting that dry, let's get some hair in. Because I'm getting down to 15 minutes, aren't I?
Yeah, you're at 11:13.
Okay. Oh. I did some splattering. These long strokes, that's where I have the most amount of trouble with my trimmers in my hands. Getting these strokes and being able to get them to go smoothly without sort of like a jog in them. It's hard to describe what happens, but my hands just start to tremor in the middle. It's called intentional tremors, and I've got them. My grandmother had them. Her hands shook horribly. Now, next to the face, over here next to the face, I've got some other ones going up that way. And go a little bit darker here.
That's awesome.
See, my hardware brush, I love it. It's also fabulous for like doing grasses on a landscape and all of that kind of stuff. It just is a great brush. Yeah.
It's encouraging to hear how even with the hand trimmers, you've still learned how to keep painting and work with it, that you haven't given up because of that. We're all
Oh,
really
yeah.
encouraged by that.
Oh, yeah. All right. Why I couldn't stand it if I couldn't paint. I mean, if any of you read their questionnaire, I made the statement in there that if I had to paint every single day of my life, I would slip my wrist, which is true. But on those days that I paint, the joy is immeasurable. I also have pre-glaucoma, so talk about eyes and hands as being the bugaboo of my life. I take drops in my eyes for that. So you know what? I'm going to spray this and just let some running happen. Get a little softness and some varied edges in there. Now I've got to bring in some shadows up on the top. This is where this brush comes in very handy because I can just lay it flat. It's very high key, you guys. It's not, it would probably work better with another layer of color, but I'm not going to be able to get to that today in this session because we're almost done, but
Molly, we have a question from Barb. She says, why do you always put blue at the temple and red in the ears?
well, another artist, that artist Janet Rogers, often does that in her paintings, and I find that it just brings the paintings to life a little bit. It really does. Now this is, I use CAD red light. I've been saving my last tubes of it. CAD red light is when you put it down, it looks really dark, but then when it dries back, it's not dark at all. I mean, I always end up having to go in and put it down a second time for the most part. But it's just a good, nice, warm color.
Molly, this is Ethel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just for time check, yeah, we have 10 minutes to go.
Okay. That should be enough for me to get a background on. So let me dry this real quick. And then I'll move on to the background.
Do you not put a highlight in the eye?
She won't hear you with the hair dryer.
Okay, so what's really going to bring this to life is when I put in the pupil.
There we go.
I hardly ever paint a full circle. I just do kind of like a little half moon thing. Put a little darkness around the edge of the eye because they always, the light eyes usually have darker edges around the iris. And the highlight is everything. And I use white gouache for this. I have a lot of titanium white paint in this house. And when I discovered white gouache, I never opened another tube again. So there's that. Okay. Now I'm just going to wet this background. Some of this hair is going to bleed out into it. It's okay. I don't want defined strokes over here. Now, John, one of my favorite colors, your gray titanium.
Very
Such a
cool.
great color. And darken it a little bit. Always bring some of the background color over the portrait so that it integrates. And your subject doesn't look like he's been cut out and pasted down. And I'm not doing a very defined background here. Go a little bit
What
darker.
did you darken the gray titanium with?
Neutral tint, another one of my favorite colors. I don't use it quite as heavy as Thomas Schaller does. He really uses the neutral tint quite heavy. I don't go quite like that. Now, I can't stand this. This is why I use white artist tape. It's more expensive than masking tape, but look what you can do. I use black gator boards because I can't stand the look, you know, of paint all around the edges of things. It offends me, so. Okay, I think I'll put some of this green down in here. Shadow here.
This is absolutely gorgeous, Molly.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
It's beautiful.
The gray background just gave it breath of air around the figure.
It did.
And see how everything is just, I don't know if you can see how the hair is just falling into the back. I mean, this is the magic of watercolor, you guys. I mean, this is what watercolor does that I just don't think any other medium does. It's just so beautiful.
You got the emotions so beautifully, Molly.
Oh,
Mm.
good. Now, where did I put paint?
We have a comment here from JJ Jamil. saying, beautiful work, Molly. Thank you so much for sharing your gift with us. And
Oh, thank
very
you.
inspirational. It is amazing how much you accomplish in such a short time.
Well, I will tell you, I will probably go back in when this is over. John, do you want me to send you the finish to you at some
Actually,
point?
if you could post it, Molly, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, so post it.
And then
On
we
your
can
page.
post.
Yeah, and then Ethel will get in touch with you to post it across all the other platforms.
Okay, because I said in the beginning, I'm not great at this social media stuff. I'm not,
No
I
problem.
don't even know how to tag anybody, you guys. I mean, that's how bad I am.
That's okay.
That's a good thing. Hey, Molly, could you put your beginning artwork next to it? Not the black and white, but the color one you did. Just put it right next to
Oh,
what you
sure.
just finished.
Let me just do one more thing on this and then we can
Of course.
call it.
Yeah, of
Please,
course.
you know, we've still got, I've got 3 minutes, John.
You have as much time as you need. That
These,
really did come to life.
these fleshy parts in the corner of the eyes, you guys, really important. All these little details, you know, this little smile line and all the details really make a difference. And those fleshy things, I don't know what you call them, really make a difference. I don't know what that is in the corner of the eye. Does anybody know what that is? A little bit of extra shadow here. A little bit of extra shadow there. Oops. Handprint there.
Molly, I love your flat brush control, brush strokes. Love it.
Really?
Yeah.
I just have better control with the flat brushes. I'm not exactly sure why, but I just do. So let me cover this up. I'm gonna call this good for now. I always go away and come back and look later. And I see something I don't like right here.
The question you asked about the eyes, someone Google searched it and said epicanthal fold.
It's what?
Epicanthal fold. Very
Huh,
complicated name.
never heard that before.
Are you going to share, are you going to share the color for the African American skin?
Yes. I will do that. Now, in the beginning, I showed you the painting, the slideshow. On the slideshow, you saw the African American there. Well, this is a second version I did of her because she was a demo in a class, right? And before, I mean, don't look at this because I didn't even draw anything there. I was just playing around. What I did was I went in and I just started putting colors together. And I did that before I did any other kind of portrait as well. And I would go in and I would do these little swatches to see, and I would write down, I don't know if you can see this, write down the colors underneath that I used. I loved this combination. This is Quin Burnt Scarlet, Raw Sienna, and Moonglow. That was a beautiful combination. And all of these worked really, really well. So I always do these ahead of time, especially if I'm doing a skin tone that I'm not real used to, like an African American skin tone. And these I didn't
Such a
write down.
beautiful,
But-
beautiful tertiary gray, luminous. Love it.
Yeah, and she, I would show you the other one because it's actually my favorite, but it's hanging in a show right now. She was done in one class. And this one isn't finished yet, but here she is from another session. So look at the difference. Every time I do these more than once, they come out looking really, really different. This one is only about maybe 2/3 finished. I don't even know if I will finish it because, I mean, why? But here are these two. And when this dries, I probably will go in and add a few more layers and bring up some of the, you know, I just don't have enough color down here yet. And I will add more, and that's what I will end up doing. But I'm at 11:30, so I guess I'm, you know, pretty much stopped for right now. There's
You did a
something
great job.
weird happening here, and I don't know exactly what I'll do there, but I'm not. Sometimes I like this kind of stuff, but I don't really like it here, so I'll probably fix that. I'll definitely get more color around the eyes and more color on this side of the face because the light's coming. I'm happy with this side of the face. That looks pretty good. I need a little bit more shadow down here. They're just, you know, some other things, but if I sit and let it, you know, just let it simmer for a little bit, when I come back to it, I see those things that I don't always see right when I'm in the middle of painting them.
It's fantastic, Molly. Thank you very much. It was great to watch you do incredible in an hour.
Well,
Less
thank
than-
you, John.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Again, thank you, Molly. We're gonna repost Molly's finished work so you'll see it. Thank you all for joining. Wish you a great day and see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Molly, beautiful.
Painting.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.